Somewhere in the northwest region of Cameroon, a mother is fighting to keep her child with a disability fed, safe, and in school, inside a system that was never built with her in mind. And trust me, that is not a program failing her. That is a gap. It is a gap in evidence, it is a gap in policy, it is a gap in what inclusive development actually means. And so as we welcome you to the Kwatta Podcast Series, we should have in mind that we have all seen standard charity projects. We have seen a cash handout here or a borehole there or a photo opportunity and then silence. But today we are looking at a project in Cameroon that completely flips that script. You see, this project treats poverty alleviation not as an emotional lottery, but as a strict and intentional science. And I am joined by someone who lives inside this work every day, in the markets, in the households, in the meetings, and she is going to walk us through the journey.
Glad to be here. My name is Njumanu Constance, and I'm project coordinator at Effective Basic Services Africa. And you are right. We actively reject what we call stomach work. Acting purely on emotion, feeling a plate today and never checking whether anything changes tomorrow. So we design the work that we do on this project with persons with disability by combining three things: research evidence, local data, and the lived experience of families of persons with disability. So everything you hear today around this project came from those sources.
Okay, thank you. So before we go deeper, I would want you to situate us, like, what exactly is the Wakka Inclusive Njangi Project?
So the Wakka Inclusive Njangi Project is a livelihood and social protection project funded by Christian Blind Mission International and implemented by eBASE Africa. This project is running through from December 2025 to December 2026 in the center and south regions. It reaches 100 persons with disabilities and caregivers through 5 components, working as one system: business and digital skills training, startup asset kits, which we call incentivization of evidence use, inclusive Njangi saving groups linked to bank accounts and health micro insurance through community mutuals, and linkage to state social protection via Minas. But it did not appear from nowhere. This particular project was piloted in Bamenda with 30 families, and that pilot produced a peer-reviewed research, and every lesson from those research is built on every lesson you see around Wakka is built from that research. So to understand Wakka, we need to start from that pilot in Bamenda.
So you talked about Bamenda and 30 families. So we'd like to know what did the baseline reality look like for these 30 families while in Bamenda during the pilot phase?
So we already know there's a lot of song around exclusion when it comes to persons living with disability. But one thing that evidence informed us was that this exclusion that is seen about around persons with disability is stacked in layers. I'm talking about the layers here are health, education, empowerment, social well-being, livelihood. And when we talk about health, disability here means cause that families, normal families that do not have persons with disability, it exists in the families of persons with disability. I'm talking around health costs around physiotherapy, medication, a wheelchair repair. And most times, almost nobody, persons with disability, none of them has insurance. So every illness that comes must always come like an emergency. And when we look at education as one of the exclusion, where persons with disabilities face exclusion, many of the children are simply not in school. The other children go out in the morning and the child with a disability stays home. That should tell you that the children remain alone and their parents rarely sit in parent-teacher association, so nobody speaks for them where decisions are being taken or decisions are being made about education, inclusion in the education space. Let's look at finance as one of the places where they face exclusion. Let's just look at our traditional Njangi. It was built, but people with disabilities were not taken into consideration when the system was being created, so they are excluded. It assumes members who attend every meeting contribute equally and they absorb their own shocks. So persons with disabilities are not found within these structures, these community saving structures or finance structures. Let's talk about documentation. Many have no ID card, no birth certificate, no disability card. So the government cannot see them. And if the government cannot see you, can you claim what the law has promised you as a person with disability? Definitely you cannot. And because you cannot claim some of these things, persons with disability face enormous challenges around not even being able to access banking services and even this insurance service that we're talking about. And underneath all these difficulties, we have knowledge. Most families do not know what exists for them to tap into, and people who do not know do not act. We will bear with me that if you do not have knowledge around something, you will not be able to take an action.
So I feel like that paints the realities on ground clearly. Now, the cycle that you mentioned earlier, the one that keeps repeating itself, how does it unfold in reality?
So let's picture this. A family works for months and build a capital for around, let's say, 150,000 francs. Then a shock lands. It could be a health shock, an educational need, right? Or the child falls ill. Or the child's assistive device breaks. There is no insurance or no safety net for this person with disability to fall back to. There's only one pot of money in that house. That capital, that 150,000 francs. What happens? The family depletes money that is meant for business to meet up with that health shock. So the business pays for those shocks, for those emergencies, and the family resets back to zero. We call it the zero reset. Some families had lived it 3-4 times, meaning they will gather money for business, shocks will come, the business will pay for those shocks. So let me give you an example of one of our entrepreneurs, a person living with disability, who we now call Lady E. She was a mother whose son developed a disability linked to severe malnutrition. He was isolated, he was not going to school. One of those children who remained alone. So her business could not carry that household alone, given all the complexities around the disabilities that the son has. Was it that this woman was not hardworking? No, she was hardworking. It's just because everything that was happening was centered on her and the little business that she was running.
So how did you respond with all these problems? Because I'm sure you did not respond with a bigger handout. I'm sure you responded with some evidence. How was the whole process like for you?
So we synthesized the WHO community-based rehabilitation guidelines. We also looked at local disability data by Dr. Lynn Cockburn, and we also did some systematic reviews on economic empowerment for improving livelihoods for persons living with disabilities. And our community workers as well kept on doing household visits where they had communications and conversations with persons living with disabilities where they shared their stories, their lived experiences. So we gathered all of those data and it informed us. So we had 3 sources of evidence and we arrived at one conclusion. The problem was never poverty. So the model works on 5 pillars at once. The model that we have designed based on the evidence that we gathered from all these sources. It worked on 5 pillars. Health, because money without insurance is wasted by first emergency. We already spoke about this. Education, because the returns to schooling are among the strongest evidence in development economics. You bear with me that there's a lot of returns on investment when you invest in education. And because we know that when parents join the PTA, Parents Teacher Association, inclusion improves, right? And when they sit with a child doing homework, performance also improves. And then when we look at empowerment as another pillar, because you cannot claim rights you have never heard of. Social well-being, the opposite of the child who remains alone, and livelihood built on structured saving. So those are some of the pillars that our evidence informed.
There is a lot. There is a lot to learn from your work.
Yeah.
I would equally say that I had the liberty of reading through the project report, and there is this framework that I noticed that you haven't talked about, and I would like you to throw some light on it. The KISB framework, is that it?
Yes, the KISB framework, that is for knowledge, intention, self-efficacy, and behavior. Let's do a quick example. If you know that rain is going to fall tomorrow, you have the intention to carry an umbrella. Bird, you have just an intention. If you do not have an umbrella, will you be able to carry that umbrella?
Not at all.
And if you do not also have the means to buy that umbrella, you will not be able to buy one. That is self-efficacy, the means and confidence to act. So our families are failing at every link. So we have to diagnose before we prescribe, find a broken link, repair that link. And how did we do that? Trainings. Our trainings will help repair knowledge. The assets that we are giving is incentivization for evidence use, because these families are making good use of the evidence that we're bringing to them around health, education, empowerment, and livelihood. And when we give them those assets, what happened? We build their intention and their self-efficacy, right? And crisis loan repair means and storytelling, which research shows that it builds self-efficacy. And when it builds self-efficacy, it repairs belief.
But it looks like there is an unconventional part about all this. It looks like there is a strict graduation ladder. I heard that at some points in time, people actually walked away from the project. Can you?
Yes, and by people, you mean some of our beneficiaries in the pilot phase. Yes, not everybody was happy. Families had to score points for evidence-backed behaviors. I'm talking about points around you have to show that your children are in school, you're saving regularly, you're using the insurance instead of draining your business capital. And so our community members will always go to their houses to ask questions around these components. And you have to score some points before capital was released. And that's why you see we are calling it incentivization of evidence use, because it's doing the scoring that it tells us that you're making good use of evidence around the 5 components. So families could score up to 65%, and if you could score up to that percent, then we incentivize you. Some people got angry because it's a rigorous process. Families left, and even an implementing partner even withdrew because it's a very, again, a rigorous evidence. But we stuck to evidence. We had to stick to evidence, and those who stayed with us will tell you that discipline was the gift that they needed to pull through.
I want to have clarity on something. This regular saving, was it just like one pot of money? Was the money just saved in bulk, or how?
No, that's the beautiful thing about our project. Evidence informed us on how this could work, and we use what we call the Joseph model way of saving. So every member holds the Joseph model passbook. Every deposit made after every sale, we divide across different rubrics. 30% goes to general saving, 15% to insurance, 10% on education, 15% on assistive devices, 20% on household needs, 10% to a cooperative fund for crisis loans. And that passbook is so that the 5 pillars can be amplified and the needs of these 5 pillars can be met without the business capital being depleted.
And so what happened to the families that were able to climb?
I'm sure you remember Lady E I mentioned earlier. Today she has an enterprise that she calls Lady E Designs. That's not how she started. Today it's a whole branded Togo and African print enterprise with its own industrial embroidery machine. She didn't start like that. Her capital grew from 250,000 francs to 1 million through investment and diversification. And where she once saved 45,000 francs in just 1 or 2 months, she now saves around 200,000. But the result I carry with me as a project coordinator is not just the fact that she's been able to move her savings from 45,000 to 200,000 francs. That's a very good thing. But what is catching my interest more is the fact that her son can now receive physiotherapy on a regular basis. His mobility has improved. The boy who remained alone is now more socially engaged, and he's even in school.
Okay. So is it safe to say that these women, I mean women like Lady E, that they are the ones that now have a role in the next chapter?
Yeah, they have a beautiful role. We call them the millionaire ladies, right? Right now, they have joined our forums with our current beneficiaries in the center and south region, and they're acting as leaders, sharing experiences from how they were able to score points and move up the ladder from starting from level 1, and now they are millionaires.
Wow. I see that the model now scales into the center and south as Wakka. So for a donor, for a policymaker, or for a first-time listener, because I'm sure we have first-time listeners listening to this episode right now, what is the one takeaway message that you have for them?
So improving the livelihood of persons with disability is a science and should not be done as though it's a charity case, because if you do it as a charity case, it will not be sustainable, because knowledge alone is not enough. Money alone vanishes overnight, and that's why we'll not come and give them money at a go. Change happens when you combine rigorous evidence with local data plus lived experiences. And that's why you see, even within the solution that we are providing, we have to embed insurance inside the community savings structure, savings instrument, pardon you, and condition capital on behavior. Before we give you capital, you have to pay through some particular behaviors, and those behaviors could be determined through the scoring. So fix the whole household, and you can build a permanent economic engine. This work began in 2016 with just 6,000 euros. Today, it's reaching more children. I'm talking about 100 families in the center and south regions. That's to tell you that at every stage, we had something to show.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much. I'm guessing that if there is one thing that I've picked from our discussion today, it's that we should always value evidence over guesswork. Because for persons with disabilities, dignity shouldn't depend on charity or on luck or on which household or health worker happens to visit first. It should be built on evidence, on knowing what actually improves a life and following through on it, one household at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Wakka Inclusive Njangi and what it is all about. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for upcoming episodes.